excused. Will the clerk please call the roll of the remaining committee members?
Councilmember Herbold.
Jacob, my apologies. We need to start the recording really quick. IT, can you please start the recording?
Oh, my apologies. I thought IT had started recording already. Let me know when
recording in progress.
Okay, we are recording now. Thank you.
Okay, great. We will try that one more time. The September 6, 2023 meeting of the Seattle City Council's Public Assets and Homelessness Committee will come to order. It is 2:05 p.m. I'm Andrew Lewis, chair of the committee. Will the clerk please call the roll, noting that Councilmember Morales is excused?
Councilmember Herbold.
Here.
Council President Juarez.
Here.
Councilmember Mosqueda.
Present.
Chair Lewis.
Present.
Chair, there are 4 members present.
If there is no objection, the agenda will be adopted. Hearing no objection, the agenda is adopted. Chair's report. We have a very packed agenda today, though hopefully we don't have any controversial agenda items. So I'm hoping that we will be able to accomplish this large body of work in front of the council's budget process. In that spirit of making sure we can get to our agenda items, given that I understand some committee members do have a hard stop later this afternoon, I'm going to limit the public comment session to 1 minute per speaker, and the clerk will preside over the public comment session, and we will begin public comment now.
Our first in-person public commenter is Lisa Nitza, followed by Gina Hall.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm Lisa Nitza, principal at Nitza Stegan. As the former chair of the Metropolitan Improvement District, managed by the Downtown Seattle Association, I want to start by thanking you for renewing and approving expansion of the MID for the next 10 years. Please pass the Parks Agreement renewal for the next 6 years and its expansion to add Pioneer Park and Bell Street Park to those already managed by the MID DSA, Westlake Park, and Occidental Square. In meeting with Seattle ratepayers for the past year to understand their needs and just what it is going to take to have Seattle's downtown fully thrive again, there was an outpouring of support for the services and efficient, effective, and reliable way they were delivered by the DSA MID to bring to the city: clean sidewalks, clean and safe parks, helpful ambassadors for employees, tourists, and residents, safety patrols, and activated public spaces with entertainment and community gatherings drawing people to the city. I hope that you will consider this and pass it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Our next public commenter is Gina Hall, followed by Eldon Tam.
Thank you, and good afternoon, council members. My name is Gina Hall. I am the CEO of Uplift Northwest, formerly the Millionaire Club Charity. I'm also on the board of directors for the Downtown Seattle Association, and I am here to comment on the Parks Agreement renewal. I have lived, worked, and played in and around downtown Seattle my entire life since I am a Seattle native. My brothers and I were allowed by my parents to purchase an all-day bus pass and take Metro downtown and hang out. I was recently inspired by my all-staff Uplift Northwest staff meeting that we held at Waterfront Park. We and 35 of my core staff walked from Belltown to Waterfront Park. We moved all the chairs together. We commenced to have a, oops, I'm almost out of time. Anyway, it was a glorious occasion where we felt safe, we felt proud and refreshed. So extending this partnership for another 6 years and expanding it to include Pioneer Park and Bell Street Park builds on a track record of success. It's also aligned with Mayor Harrell's downtown activation plan. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Gina. Our next public commenter is Eldon Tam, followed by Thatcher Bailey.
Good morning, council members. My name is Eldon Tam. I'm here representing Friends of Waterfront Seattle. My comments are in support of passing the Downtown Parks Agreement renewal. Since 2016, DSA and the city have successfully managed Occidental Park and Westlake Park, creating vibrant spaces that infuse our city with activity, life, and joy. These are essential spaces in our collective efforts to invigorate downtown and DSA is an effective partner to the city ensuring these spaces are safe and create a sense of belonging for all Seattleites. DSA is a valued collaborator with ours and other local organizations, residents, and businesses throughout Seattle. Parks are crucial to Seattle's downtown life and the coming back of our downtown activation. Friends of Waterfront Seattle urges you to renew this partnership and expand it to include Pioneer Park and Bell Street Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Eldon. Our next public commenter is Thatcher Bailey, followed by Reza Marashi.
Hello, council members. My name is Thatcher Bailey, and during my tenures at Seattle Parks Foundation and Friends of the Waterfront, I worked in close partnership with DSA on urban parks programming and management. They deserve our gratitude for making clean, safe, welcoming, and inclusive parks a central feature of our downtown. Everyone wins if they are able to continue and expand upon this work. Urban parks get hard use and require extra resources, more staffing, and nimble creative management to ensure they can meet the needs of all the residents, businesses, and visitors who rely on them as places of respite and connection. The health of our urban parks is a direct reflection of the health of our downtown. Great cities around the world have figured this out and are investing huge sums to design new and enhance existing urban park spaces. I know you all understand this, and continued in this investment in this partnership is probably a no-brainer for you. Thank you for that and for all the ways you have championed our parks over the years during your tenure on the council.
Thank you, Thatcher. Our next public commenter is Reza Marashi, followed by Lauren Lundberg.
Hello, Councilmember Lewis, council members via Zoom. My name is Reza Marashi. I'm Director of Government Affairs for Kilroy Realty Corporation and Board Chair of the Metropolitan Improvement District. Rather than repeating all of the salient points my predecessors here at public comment said, I just want to say that I agree with everything that they've said about renewing the Parks Agreement. And really what this is all about, if you're having a tough time crystallizing it in your mind, is these three individuals sitting right here in their blue jackets. When you walk around downtown Seattle and you see things that are clean, safe, healthy, and vibrant, it's because of the work that they're doing. It wasn't that long ago that we asked you to renew the ordinance that supported MID. So all you're doing here is an extension of what you've already done. So please take this layup, which doesn't often happen in the world of politics, support the Parks Agreement renewal, and let's make life easy and better for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Reza. Our next public commenter is Lauren Lundberg, followed by AP Hurd.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Lauren Lundberg from the Soto Business Improvement Area, here in support of passing the Parks Agreement renewal. Extending and expanding this partnership for another 6 years builds on a proven track record of success in activating our public spaces, creating clean, safe, and thriving opportunities for people to gather. The collaboration between DSA and the city has effectively managed Westlake Park and Occidental Square, which have become important spaces for residents, businesses, and visitors of all ages who come to our downtown. Parks are significant locations creating opportunities for cultural, social, and outside meeting points, and renewing this agreement plays a crucial role in shaping our downtown's future. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Our next public commenter is AP Hurd, followed by Bruce.
Hi, my name is AP Hurd, and I have a company called Skipstone that works on projects that improve the public realm and previously developed a lot of buildings in downtown Seattle. I've also been a volunteer at the city in lots of different capacities, including working on the downtown activation plan, the office building repurposing, and many other volunteer efforts. I'm also a board member of the DSA and of Commute Seattle. I also commute by bus downtown and work downtown every day. I'll just say that on a personal level, the efforts that the DSA has made over the last several years to improve the parks that it is currently managing, including particularly Occidental Square, have been transformative to my experience working downtown and have made those parks inclusive spaces that feel safe for everybody there. As someone who often transfers at Bell Street on the bus, I would say that that space does not share those characteristics, and I very much support the DSA expanding their management contract and renewing the park agreement for 6 more years so that they can bring this quality of management to other spaces that are challenged and that challenge our downtown renewal. Thank you.
Thank you, AP. Our next public commenter is Bruce Drager, followed by Carrie Kaplan.
Yeah, hi there. My name is Bruce Drager, and I represent Green Lake Homeless Advocates. And I've been here before and told you that what I do is I work with folks that are in encampments that are in imminent risk of being swept. And I'm working with the population of folks on Leary Way these days. And I hold in my hand here over 30 letters that we've addressed to Bruce Harrell, asking him not to sweep that area until a viable housing option is made available to those people. And like I say, I urge anyone who wants to get copies of these letters, you can look at my website if I can get them downloaded quickly enough. Or you can email me, and I'm going to leave some cards with you guys if you'd like to see these letters. We're going to provide an accompanying letter to Bruce Harrell from a consortium of folks that I work with, business leaders and church leaders, as well as homeless organizations there that are working with those people that are in support of these letters. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce.
The cards right here.
Thank you. We'll pick those up. Our next public commenter is Carrie Kaplan, followed by Valerie Heidi Mudra.
Okay, here we go, real fast. Us against them. I'm here to change that. In order to survive, we must all have a sense of self-respect, self-identity, self-fulfillment, and self-power. When we struggle with each other, to get those things, none of us benefit. We all lose. So right now, I would like to have a sing-along together called I Love You. You can sing at any pace, tone, or rhythm. You can clap, you can dance, you can hum. We're going to create a beautiful change together for a global sense of self-identity, respect, fulfillment, and power. So here we go. I wasn't able to get a chair here, so I'm going to have to put my leg up here. And just please join in. I'm very new at doing this, but change has got to happen. So here we go. I love you. Yes, I do. I love you. I love you. I do. I love you. I do. I love you. You guys were supposed to sing along for this.
Thank you, Carrie. I think we need to move on to our next public commenter.
I want to note the incentive to colleagues to I want to note the incentive to colleagues to come to these meetings in person in chambers, because you're missing out otherwise. And thank you. Mr. Clerk, you can proceed with the public comment.
Thank you, Carrie. Our next public commenter is Valerie Heidi Mudra, who will be followed by Jesse Gillihan.
Hello, I'm here to support the renewal and the extension of the agreement with the Parks Department and the Mid. I'm a 25-year resident of Belltown. I'm currently on the Belltown United Board and the Mid Board. In these roles, I've worked closely with the city, the neighborhood, and the Mid to enhance our neighborhood. The Mid does an excellent job of maintaining and programming Westlake and Occidental parks. In the last year, they have assisted the Belltown neighborhood by scheduling downtown summer sounds, as well as other activities in the park. The last of the season, Downtown Summer Sounds saw more than 200 people enjoying entertainment in Bell Street Park. Bell Street Park is the only park in Belltown, and it is really a street. It is the front door to restaurants and residents. Activation provides vibrancy and the aspect of a safe community for residents and visitors to Belltown. The lack of activation in the park impacts these restaurants and residents. We support the renewal of this agreement because it will help and enhance Belltown as a viable neighborhood that is safe, well-maintained, and welcoming to all.
Thank you. Our next public commenter is Jesse Gillihan, followed by Robert Rodriguez.
Hello. Good afternoon, council members. My name is Jesse Gillihan, Public Realms Operations Team Supervisor for the Downtown Seattle Association, and my comments are in support of passing the Parks Agreement renewal. Extending this partnership for another 6 years and expanding it into include Pioneer Park, Bell Street Park builds on a track record of success in creating clean, safe, welcoming, and inclusive public spaces. Since 2016, the collaboration between the DSA and the city has effectively managed Westlake Park and Occidental Square, which have become important spaces for residences, businesses, and visitors of all ages. The revitalization of downtown comes in the form of our parks, the heart of our city. We shepherd these in a way that keeps our parks clean, clear, and cared for. Without this agreement, I'm worried that we might slip back into a pandemic landscape of unmanaged chaos. Since becoming an ambassador earlier this year, I've watched the transformation of our parks into concerts every day with the Downtown Summer Sounds events put on in collaboration with the DSA and the city. Countless food trucks come and serve our city each day without fail, providing a much-needed place for people to gather and eat their lunches. I've seen tens of thousands of tourists visit our parks with awe and wonder at how clean and inviting they currently are. In closing, I'll say this. Mayor Harrell's downtown activation plan rightly emphasizes the significance of parks as cultural, social, and green meeting points. Renewing this agreement plays a crucial role in shaping our downtown's future. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Jesse. Next up is Robert Rodriguez, followed by Kirk Hovenkotter.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Robert Rodriguez, and I own Yellow Butterfly Coffee Shop in Pioneer Square neighborhood. I am here to support and renew of the operation management agreement between the City of Seattle and the DSA to continue the great work in the parks. As part of my testimony, I'm honored to submit a letter from over 225 downtown stakeholders who are also in support of renewing the park agreement. This letter includes downtown resident hotels operators, nonprofit partners, chefs, small business owners, restaurants, and many more who appreciate what this partnership has brought to downtown parks. Whether it is enjoying live music, getting lunch at a food truck, participating in a holiday event, playing a game of ping pong, simply enjoying the atmosphere. These parks have become gems in the city that provides public benefit for everyone. And we made it to France from Pioneer Square. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Robert. Our next public commenter is Kirk Hovenkotter, followed by Smooth.
Hi, I'm Kirk Hovenkotter. I'm the Executive Director of Commute Seattle, and I strongly support the agreement to renew the partnership between DSA, the Metropolitan Improvement District, and the Parks Department to activate our beautiful downtown parks. Commute Seattle is the nonprofit that works to make it easy to walk, bike, ride, and roll for the 600,000 people who go to work in Seattle every single day. The unique partnership in our downtown parks has allowed us to create activations that connect us with the public, further our mission, and showcase Seattle. This activation partnership has allowed us to host scooter and bike share demo days for downtown residents, employees, and visitors, for them to learn how to ride and park bike share and scooters safely. We've hosted family-friendly celebrations at the end of international conferences, giving over 200 transportation leaders from across the world the opportunity to enjoy the beauty of Occidental Park on a summer evening. And the team at DSA and the downtown ambassadors who make this possible make this seamless. With the passage of this agreement, we'll be able to bring more events to other parks like Pioneer Park and Bell Street Park. I strongly urge you to support the renewal of this agreement so we can continue to bring our programming to Seattle. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirk. Our final in-person public commenter is Smooth.
Praise God. Praise God. That's the first thing I want to say. Next thing I want to say, what I know in my experience is that this corruption, this nationwide, this corruption is affecting everybody in this room, anybody, people on the street. Minimum wage is not going to help no kid or anybody have an opportunity to have a decent life in America. These people in politics up here in DC, you just let them take all the money and then you don't punish them for corruption. Corruption is a crime. I mean, why do I have to come up here at my age and explain to you the problem that affects me and everybody in this room? I understand why people don't just stand up and impeach people. You don't have to kill nobody or nothing. All you got to do is Take your rights and your power as people and impeach the person that's not doing what we ask him to do. That's all I wanted to say. I made my point.
Thank you, Smooth. We will now move to virtual public commenters who have called in. When your name is called, please press *6 to unmute yourself, and then you will have 1 minute to provide public comment. When you hear a chime, that will mean there's 10 seconds left. Our first online public commenter is Kevin Sir. Kevin, please press *6 and you'll have 1 minute.
Hello.
Hi, Kevin. We
Good
can hear
afternoon,
you.
council members. My name's Kevin Sir. I'm the founder of the organization Artist Home, a local Indigenous-owned company promoting music and events in and around Seattle. My comments are in support of passing the Parks Agreement renewal, extending this partnership for another 6 years and expanding it to include Pioneer and Bell Street Park. And it builds on a track record of success in creating clean, safe, welcoming, and inclusive public spaces. Westlake Park and Occidental Square become important spaces for residents, businesses, artists, and visitors of all ages, and much of this is due to the collaboration between DSA and the city. Renewing this agreement will play a crucial role in shaping our downtown's future, furthering the use of our parks and being places of cultural and social interaction, as well as places to connect with nature, and places where artists and musicians have been able to perform and thrive. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you, Kevin. Our next virtual public commenter is Lisa Howard. Lisa, please press *6 and you'll have 1 minute.
Hello, my name is Lisa Howard and I'm the Executive Director of the Alliance for Pioneer Square. Today I'm commenting on item 120664. First off, I just wanted to thank Seattle Parks and Recreation for the outstanding job they've done maintaining Pioneer Park as a welcoming gateway to our district. We value the work that was done and we look forward to continue working together. Our neighborhood is at a fragile point in time regarding the recovery of our district. As many of you know from visiting this summer, many things are going really well, and yet we continue to be impacted by many issues that undermine the livability and economy of our city and our neighborhood. It will take continued partnerships to work and address these issues, and we aren't there yet. As you consider the future of our parks and public spaces, we ask that council be mindful and intentional in the direction of our shared public spaces. Intentional partnerships through the Urban Parks Partnership are critical for the long-term success of our parks and public spaces, as is the city's stewardship of the system. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Our next public commenter is Morgan Littlefield.
Thank you. I'm Morgan Littlefield, Director of City and Community Partnerships for Climate Pledge Arena. I'm calling to comment on the appointment of Marshall Foster as Director of Seattle Center. On behalf of Climate Pledge Arena and the Seattle Kraken, we thank Council for taking this step today and fully support the confirmation of Marshall Foster as Director of Seattle Center. Marshall's leadership of the Arena Advisory Committee played a key role in the development of Climate Pledge Arena. He is highly respected and admired across the landscape of Seattle Center and the Uptown neighborhood. Marshall's holistic approach and reasonable thinking are only a couple of the characteristics that will benefit him and all of us in this role as we work together to serve our community, grow Seattle Center, and continue building the Century 21 Master Plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. Our final virtual public commenter is David McLean. David, please press *6 and you'll have 1 minute.
Thank you. Hello, council members. My name is David McLean. I'm the Director of Real Estate for Historic Seattle. I ask for your support of Council Bill 120667. This ordinance authorizes a second amendment to the easement agreement between Historic Seattle PDA and Seattle Parks and Recreation at the Egan House, located at 1500 Lakeview Boulevard. Historic Seattle PDA acquired the house in 1998 and has since invested over $175,000 in capital repairs and improvements. Historic Seattle PDA landmarked the property in 2009 and continues to invest approximately $20,000 annually in this unique single-family home. Seattle Parks and Recreation owns the land surrounding the house, and via an easement which expires in 2048, allows for access to the house. Support of this ordinance will allow Historic Seattle PDA the opportunity to extend the term of the easement well into the future and will allow the property to be protected and preserved as housing. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, David. Mr. Chair, that concludes our list of in-person and virtual public commenters.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk, and thank you to everybody who commented on today's agenda. We'll proceed to our items of business. Will the clerk please read item 1 into the record?
Agenda item 1, appointment 02660, reappointment of Philip Meng as member, Board of Parks and Recreation Commissioners for a term to August 31st, 2026.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. We are joined by the nominee, Philip Meng, remotely on Zoom. Welcome to the committee. And Christopher, are you going to be introducing Christopher Williams from Parks and Recreation, the commission nominee?
Absolutely. And maybe I'll just jump right in there.
Great.
Quick shout out to friend Marshall Foster on his confirmation today before I get into it here. So Philip is here for an appointment to a term on the Board of Park and Recreation Commissioners. And if Philip is any indication of the future of engagement and participation by our young people, then our city is in really good hands. Philip recently graduated with honors from the University of Washington, where he was a triple major in information systems, global and regional studies, and finance, and is also an undergraduate fellow at the Center of Environmental Politics. As the founder of the Polling and Open Data Initiative at the University of Washington, he became passionate about parks and natural lands through projects related to recreation and ecological health. As a college student and downtown resident, Philip has brought unique perspective to the Board of Park and Recreation Commissioners over the past year as a Get Engaged member of the board. We're excited to continue to benefit from his contributions to come in the coming years. And I'll just say that Philip is one of those young people who's just brought a lot of energy to the board. He asks insightful questions. He's always well prepared, and it would be an honor to serve with him for a few more years.
Thank you so much, Deputy Superintendent Williams, for that introduction. Philip, why don't we turn it over to you for some remarks to the committee. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Deputy Superintendent Williams, for your words. Chair Lewis, council members, thank you so much for considering me for appointment to the Board of Parks and Recreation Commissioners. As was mentioned, I've been part of the board as a Get Engaged member for the last year and have really enjoyed being engaged with the important work that the department does. As a downtown resident, I'm particularly excited about all that's happening with downtown activation and on developments here in the downtown area. Just a part to add to the self-introduction. Outside, I'm a consultant with the Atlantic Council. I previously, as an intern, I had also written about policy issues at the Chicago Council and the Bipartisan Policy Center. So once again, I appreciate your consideration and look forward to any questions you may have.
Thank you so much. Philip, what are some of the projects, I'll start by asking a question, that you are looking most forward to in the next term in working with the leadership at Parks and Recreation as we engage in all sorts of projects that are in front of us, including things in the Metropolitan Park District, things that we're discussing later on the agenda, like our partnerships with organizations like the Downtown Seattle Association on place-based activations. What are some of the things that that you want to take on as a commissioner if you're reappointed?
One of the overarching areas that I'm excited about is supporting the board's work on Park District performance. So I would like to be part of the new subcommittee on Park District performance, monitoring at this stage how funds are being spent in order to support priorities that are projects that are a priority for the community. I'm particularly excited about the new park that's coming up in Little Saigon. I believe that that's slated to be slated to be launched in the near future. I know that area pretty well, and I think it's very, very exciting to have new developments in the International District and Little Saigon. And insofar as I'm interested in downtown activation, I'm really interested in seeing more events and activities in the downtown area. In fact, I was recently at the launch of the Momentum light show, and I know that those kinds of events are really valuable to the residents of this community, and I look forward to continuing to engage with the department on these developments.
Thank you so much. Do committee members have any other questions for Philip? Okay, seeing none, Philip, thank you so much. We will proceed with your appointment. So I move the committee recommend confirmation of appointment 02660. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded for the confirmation of the appointment. Are there any final comments on the appointment? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll on the recommendation to confirm the appointment?
Councilmember Herbold.
Yes.
Council President Juarez.
Aye.
Councilmember Mosqueda. Councilmember Mosqueda. Chair Lewis.
Yes.
Chair, there are 3 in favor, none opposed.
Thank you. The decision is unanimous, and the recommendation moves to full council. Thank you for coming to committee, Philip. Will the clerk quickly reread the roll on agenda item 1, please?
Buzz in a little bit quicker there, council member. I'm sorry.
Councilmember
Wrong button.
Herbold.
Councilmember Herbold?
Yes.
Council President Juarez.
Aye.
Councilmember Mosqueda.
Aye.
Chair Lewis.
Yes.
Chair, there are 4 in favor, none opposed.
There we go. It is now super unanimous, your appointment, Philip, so thank you. This recommended appointment will go to our Tuesday, the 26th meeting of full council. You do not need to attend that meeting if you do not want to. You are, of course, more than welcome to if you do, and really appreciate you coming to committee today, answering our questions, and your willingness to serve. Will the clerk please read item 2 into the agenda?
Item 2, appointment 02635, appointment of Marshall Foster as Director, Seattle Center for a term to September 1st, 2027.
Thank you. And we are joined in chambers by the nominee and Deputy Mayor Burgess. And I will turn it over to you, Deputy Mayor Burgess, to introduce the nominee and give opening remarks.
Thank you, Chairman Lewis. Okay, good. I forgot how to work this microphone, but it's working, yeah.
It hasn't been that long, Tim, since you've been
here.
It's been long
Come on now, Tim. You know how it works, buddy.
Getting back to business here. Following Robert Nellam's well-earned retirement, Mayor Harrell appointed a search committee to find the best possible leader to follow Robert. The search committee included representatives from our local arts, business, and philanthropic communities, including the Seattle Center resident organizations, the Seattle Foundation, and the Uptown Alliance. Center employees were also consulted and asked for their perspectives on the future leadership of the center. The search committee presented 3 highly qualified candidates to the mayor for consideration, including Marshall. Mayor Harrell wanted to nominate a leader who could build upon Robert Nellam's remarkable legacy at Seattle Center and shape and define a new mission and future for the center. And the mayor found that leader in Marshall Foster. As council members, you have all worked with Marshall. You know him well. Marshall has served the people of Seattle and our region as the city's planning director, as the mayor's representative to Sound Transit, as director of the Office of the Waterfront and Civic Projects, and in his current role as the interim director at Seattle Center. Marshall has served in each of these roles with distinction. Perhaps his most visible contribution can be seen today at Waterfront Park, which is partially open now and will be fully open in 2025. Marshall helped get this project up and running. It is remaking our waterfront into a beautiful, family-oriented park and pedestrian promenade that everyone in the greater Puget Sound region can enjoy. Marshall has already positively impacted the center in the last 9 months as interim director. He has overseen the department's largest hiring surge in over a decade, 26 new hires in the last 6 months. He has welcomed back legacy events that were suspended because of the pandemic, Bumbershoot, Bite of Seattle, and the center's cultural festivals. Essential to both the city and Seattle Public Schools, Marshall has led the redevelopment project for a new memorial stadium. He is currently negotiating a development agreement with the One Roof Partnership, and that agreement will come before the council in the first quarter of next year for consideration. In all of this, Chairman Lewis, Marshall has demonstrated an approach to his work that values others, is rooted in rock-solid integrity. He seeks wisdom from others. He values diversity and an inclusive leadership style. Mayor Harrell believes that Marshall will be an outstanding leader at Seattle Center, and we thank you for your consideration of his appointment. And I think you want to share a few comments?
I will.
Marshall?
Yes, I would love to. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Burgess, and good afternoon, Chair Lewis and committee members. I'm honored to be here today to share my strong interest in becoming the next director of Seattle Center, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate your words, Tim, today. I'll just say a few words about what brought me to this opportunity. I started working for the city of Seattle in 2007, and since then, I've been very fortunate to get to work with incredibly talented people and on projects and initiatives that have helped to shape the city. For me, the common element through the years has been a deep passion for helping to create great public spaces that bring people together. From the time I was very young, I have adored cities and the way people come together in cities, from all walks of life to have inspiring and at times challenging experiences, whether it's through arts and culture, through direct action and protest, or simply enjoying the many things that cities have to offer us. Through all of that, fostering and stewarding great public places that are accessible to all, that help us reconnect at a fundamental level to each other, has been what it's all about. Seattle Center is in many ways an embodiment of those ideas to me. When I look ahead at my career, Seattle Center is where I would like to invest my time and energy. I look forward and I feel like my skills and talent would make an important difference there. I feel a strong connection to the Seattle Center. In my last 9 months, I can't tell you how impressed and frankly humbled I've been by the staff and how much passion they bring and honestly how much humanity they have in their work every day, as well as the cultural organizations that call it home. It's a very special place that brings people together from all walks of life. It's the only city department that has joy and delight in its mission statement. How sweet it is to get to work for a place that's in the business of joy and delight. And I get to see that every day in the faces of people enjoying the campus. It's really a remarkable place. And the last thing I'll mention about it that I think is very special is something I learned from former Director Nellums, which is the value of belonging. It's a place that is all about helping people feel like they belong and helping people feel like they're being seen. The staff, our visitors, the communities that come together to host events, it's all about that sense of place and that sense of connection. Those are all values that are deeply inspiring to me and that I'd like to spend the rest of my time in my career focused on. Today, Seattle Center is very much at an inflection point, and this is a term that the staff has probably heard me say more than they'd like at this point. We really are at a moment where the city is changing quickly. We are working to recover from the pandemic. Our culture and our politics in some ways are polarized, and the need for a shared public experience is greater than ever. That is something Seattle Center is very committed to, is creating those public experiences and helping people overcome differences. At the same time, our arts and cultural community in Seattle has deep, more urgent needs than ever. The department itself is very much about rising to that challenge, having just had a remarkable summer, bringing major events back to life on campus, as well as expanding into our new role managing Waterfront Park. The department is hungry for new strategic direction and reinvestment, both in the people as well as in the place. Serving as Seattle Center's next director will require a leadership style that's deeply rooted in Seattle Center's strong core values, along with the broader perspective needed to build a new shared vision for the organization's future. It requires a commitment to lead a diverse team and many invested stakeholders with both some strength as well as a whole lot of empathy as the organization needs to grow and change. Fundamentally, the next director of Seattle Center has to be able to hold those values and steward them, and also help the organization move forward toward a new vision for its future. Strengthening the team, building new partnerships, and accessing new resources to help Seattle Center reimagine itself. I have learned over the past 9 months as the interim director that this is a hard balance to strike. I won't pretend to be anywhere near perfect for this role, but I do hope to bring my strengths and experience as well as my passion for great urban places to the challenge, and I think it's a lot of what Seattle Center needs at this particular moment. I couldn't be more excited and ready to step into this challenge. Fortunately for me, there's a caring and very inspired team behind me who love Seattle Center and are ready to partner in taking this on. Now is very much the time to begin that next chapter of Seattle Center's story, and with it, recenter the center as the Center for Art and Culture in Seattle. And that was a lot of centers. Thank you very much, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Interim Director Foster, and thanks to Deputy Mayor Burgess for those introductory remarks. You've been to committee several times now in your interim role to confirm commissioners and talk about programming and initiatives that are pending before the city. And it's always been great to have your team from Seattle Center come and talk about a lot of the very significant projects that we're undertaking, be it the activation of the waterfront, be it the Memorial Stadium work that we're doing, the ongoing work around climate pledge and security on the campus and public safety and everything else. And in terms of my questions today, I think I want to start with the expanded role that the Seattle Center is seeing going beyond the borders of the campus to the waterfront for the first time really in its history with the public safety and programming services that Director Nellum's innovated on campus and expanding those to the waterfront. I can just speak from my personal experience that I've seen that service in action on the waterfront already. It's making a significant difference to the stakeholders who I talk to and work with on the waterfront in keeping it a clean, safe, and open campus in a way that respects the dignity of everybody involved, integrates social services, and also holds people accountable for breaking the rules when that occurs. Could you maybe give a little bit of an update on how that work is going, what your vision is for how to keep and maintain that service to realize the vision that we want to see on the waterfront once that work is completed, and what other opportunities you see for the impact of the Office of the Seattle Center in other public spaces around the city?
I'd be happy to. It's a great area to focus on for a minute. You know, the waterfront is very much about partnerships, and I want to recognize we're about 3 months in, and we wouldn't be anywhere near where we are without the leadership of the Seattle Center directors, several of whom chose to be here today. Thank you all for joining us. Tiffany Malake, who's our operations manager for the waterfront, who has jumped into that with both feet, as well as Friends of Waterfront Seattle, and Eldon Tam was here earlier for public comment. A lot of what we are doing there is happening because of very strong partnerships that we built over more than a decade to make it possible. We have 23 dedicated staff that we brought online to do that work. And that is fundamental to what made it possible. That was a big lift for Seattle Center to do that level of recruiting, hiring, training, getting people ready to go. It has been working, and it, for me, has been a testament to the original idea, which was that we needed a dedicated full-time team who thought about not 15 things, but they thought about one thing, which was the quality and care of the waterfront. It also speaks to the power, and this is something we learned from Robert Nellums, of bringing together programming, maintenance, and public safety under one umbrella that can think about those issues in an integrated way. And so that's what we are doing down there every day. And to the extent it is succeeding, which I think it is, it's because of that integration of approach. The challenge we have now is the waterfront is far from finished. We are opening new spaces all the time, and we need to grow that team quickly. We need to have a smooth transition from the Office of the Waterfront to Seattle Center, and we need to plan for the future. You know, one of the big things that we sometimes struggle with in the city is how we plan for capital replacement of assets as they fail, which unfortunately they always do. And so we're working with the Parks Department and SDOT to how we make sure that that park is going to look as good 5 years in, 10 years in as it does on opening day. But it is off to a very good start.
Thank you for that update. I'm really looking forward to seeing the waterfront park, be fully completed, activated, and appreciate the work that you've been doing to prepare for that eventuality in your new role. I want to ask one more question, then I'll turn it over to my colleagues. That I'm just curious to get your take on that is outside of the four corners of the questions we sent in advance. When we had Bite of Seattle in late July, there was a little bit of a controversy covered in GeekWire about the use of an app, the Check app, as the primary way for vendors to conduct business, and it led to a little bit of pushback and some logistical challenges, and some people reportedly starting to just take cash on the side because the app was not working or congruent to what was happening. In terms of bringing together future festivals, are there movements to incorporate that feedback to try to figure out a way to avoid some of those technological hurdles in the future?
Yes, and that was a very real issue. I would say it wasn't the majority's experience. We had many, many people who were reported being very pleased with how the Check app functioned. It was the first time we've ever used it, and so there were some bumps on the road for sure. We are working with Checks, and we have some adjustments to the festival that we will be talking about for next year that will help give the public more options. You know, we want people who would like to have that sort of streamlined experience of one app for everything, be able to use it, but also, you know, folks who want to use cash, folks who want to use credit card to have other options. So that we're actually, something we're focused on a lot this fall is sort of what are our lessons learned from the major festivals? You know, we haven't had some of those festivals in several years. And so that's an example of something where we're actually going to intentionally stop. We are, you know, taking in how should we make some changes, working with the producer to say what's it going to look like and how will it be different next year. And that is something I can tell you that will be different, is there'll be more options for how people pay.
Great. All right. Good to hear that update. Are there questions from colleagues for the nominee? Councilmember Herbold is coming. There we go. Yeah, Councilmember Herbold, and then followed by Councilmember Mosqueda.
Thank you. Not so much questions, more just a statement. I really appreciate the recognition that a successful Seattle Center is really dependent on the partnerships that you build, and looking at all you've done for the city, success of all you've done, whether or not it's waterfront or work at South Lake Union or Yes for Paris. All of these things could not be possible if it wasn't for the successful collaborations and partnerships that you've built. So just seeing the through line of your skills and your capabilities to this new challenge, which I'm really confident that you will excel, and really appreciate just looking through the questions and answers from the council, as it relates specifically to working with the council, I just want to say that I strongly concur with what you say, that your approach has been to get to know council members and their priorities. And I feel that you have definitely done so in your time with the city, and I really appreciate that and look forward to seeing where the leadership of Seattle Center goes under your watch. Thank you so much.
You're going to have your work cut out for you meeting new council members soon, because we're going to have an awful lot of new ones that are going to be here on the dais. So, Councilmember Mosqueda.
Thank you for making a pitch for the legislation we just considered in my committee this morning on that note. I can't see you, Mr. Foster, but thank you very much, Director Foster, for the work that we've done in partnership over the last few years, but especially your interest and your openness to engaging in the discussion with our labor partners, both at the waterfront and at Seattle Center, specific as well to the ongoing conversations that are evolving along the waterfront and Memorial Stadium. It's been great to see you engage in that way, and I just wanted to appreciate that and recognize similarly to the vision that you have for Seattle Center. When we invest in and partner with labor and unions, that actually improves the health of our overall economy and working conditions for all workers. So thank you for being a high road employer and negotiator on those discussions. And I look forward to continuing to work with you on the clinic services that you offer at the Seattle Center as well, and really appreciated the detailed tour that you and your staff offered to my team when we walked through. Among the things that you opened up this year, the public health clinic, the free clinic for our community is one of those, and I know it was well attended and greatly appreciated by both clients, patients, and the providers. So congratulations on that, and I look forward to working with you more on the clinic concepts over the years to come.
Thank you very much. Can I add just a small comment?
Yes, please.
I just wanted to say on the labor point how much being in this role now has, for me, opened up just a much deeper appreciation for how we partner with labor. You know, the waterfront and things, we focus on those, you know, the labor harmony and how to create opportunity. This job is all about hands-on partnerships. And one of the things I've loved about the last few months have been the moments where I've gotten to go out with staff and understand what our stage and sound crews do, understand what our groundskeeping team does, understand what our different represented teams are doing on the campus, and it just enriches my understanding of how to be a good partner to labor, to have that kind of on the ground experience. It's one of the very cool things about being there. So let me know if you want to come back and see more of behind the scenes. We were very happy to have you at the clinic.
I do. Thank you. Yes, let's schedule that. And thanks again for that partnership.
Thank you so much, council colleagues. I don't see any additional questions, so I'll give a couple of closing remarks. I will, of course, be voting very enthusiastically to recommend the confirmation of Marshall Foster as the permanent director for the Office of the Seattle Center. Just an incredible nominee with a broad depth of experience and a track record of working very closely with the legislative branch on a number of different projects in a variety of capacities. The Seattle Center is a very unique place, and I don't think there's any city cabinet level position like it in other parts of the country, as sort of this civic, cultural, completely pedestrianized campus that we elevate to that level of having a cabinet level director, and make sure it's a priority for us to continue to invest in, reinvent, and cultivate that space. And especially at a time where we are expanding the reach and the programming, I think it's important that we have a nominee of the caliber of Marshall Foster running that office. I think that's in keeping, candidly, just to digress a little bit further, with the quality of the cabinet nominees that the Harrell administration has been sending to the council over the course of the last year and a half, who, you know, if it's AP Diaz or Greg Spots, people who are really modeling innovation, accessibility, creativity, and problem solving. And I know that we all here on the City Council appreciate that spirit of collaboration, and we are happy, at least speaking for myself, and soon I think for the committee recommendation, to be adding another great permanent problem-solving member to the cabinet. So with that, I'm going to move recommendation of the confirmation of appointment for appointment 02635. Is there a second?
Second?
It has been moved and seconded to recommend confirmation of the appointment. Are there any final comments? Seeing no final comments, will the clerk please call the roll on the recommendation to confirm the appointment?
Councilmember Herbold.
Yes.
Council President Juarez.
Yes.
Councilmember Mosqueda.
Aye.
Chair Lewis.
Yes.
Chair, there are 4 in favor, none opposed.
Excellent. Well, this recommendation to confirm the appointment is adopted and will be referred to the next full council meeting on the 26th. You need not come in person, but of course you are more than welcome to come for that final confirmation, and look forward to confirming you before we go into the budget. So thank you so much for coming here today, and thank you, Deputy Mayor Burgess, for coming down today.
Thank you very much.
We will now move on to agenda item 3. Will the clerk please read agenda item 3 into the record?
Council Bill 120664, an ordinance relating to Seattle Parks and Recreation authorizing an operations and management agreement between the City of Seattle, a Washington State Municipal Corporation by and through Seattle Parks and Recreation, and the Downtown Business Improvement Association, a Washington State nonprofit corporation, to enter into an operation and management agreement for activation and programming services at Bell Street Park, Occidental Park, Pioneer Square, and Westlake Park, and ratifying and confirming certain prior acts.
Thank you so much, Mr. Clerk. Do we have, is it going to be John who's coming up and presenting? John, do you have anyone else with you, or is it just you? Just me. Okay, please have a seat. Welcome. John Scholes from the Downtown Seattle Association, for the record. And we do have some people virtually joining us, yes? Is that, Christopher, are you on this panel as well? Great. So who should start? Should we start with John Scholes or you, Christopher?
Oh, I think I'm going to kick us
Go
off
ahead,
here.
please. Christopher, yes.
Yeah, I'll jump in there. Thank you so much. I think one of the, I think it was the mid-board chairperson who described this as a layup, and I couldn't agree more. Today, we're bringing forward a contract for renewal between the Seattle Park and Recreation Department and DSA, or Downtown Seattle Association. This is a purchase of services contract in which the department is partnering with DSA to purchase activation services for downtown. And basically, this is 100% public benefits accrue to the city from this contract. From a transparency standpoint, at the direction of the previous administration, we did not elect to do an RFP for this work. Additionally, this is such specialized niche area of work. We felt that the DSA had performed over and above expectations. And DSA has been an incredible partner activating our downtown parks. And not only have they revitalized Occidental and Westlake, but they've always exceeded their fundraising target by double, if not more. And putting all those into programming have really increased the vitality of our downtown parks. One of the things I would also say here is that this partnership is in recognition that sometimes there are partners who do things exceedingly better than we do as a department. And that's one of the reasons that we are interested in renewing this activation agreement with DSA, because what they do in terms of fundraising and activation is really quite terrific. They're going to provide us with 362 days of programming and activation in our downtown parks, and a handful of downtown parks, I should say. Next slide, or rather, that was the, I guess that was the first slide. Why don't we get on to the next slide, contracting update goals.
Yeah, well, hold on.
Okay.
Just a moment, Christopher. I just want to make sure. Do we have the slide? Okay, it's up on in Chambers. Okay, great. Go ahead. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure that we had it up for everyone to see.
Okay, thank you. So as we work with DSA, we share a common goal to provide safe, active downtown parks. We want to create a welcoming environment with activities that reflect the community. We want to demonstrate success through people counts and surveys and metrics. And all funds raised will go back into reprogramming the parks and activating them. I think it's important to note that the activation strategies are part of a greater effort to increase the perception of public safety in our downtown parks. So it's not just activation for the sake of activation. It fosters the perception that these 4 parks are safe places for families and kids. Next slide. Okay, so the contract outlines the services that DSA will provide. They're going to provide a daily presence in 4 parks listed here. They'll provide weekly larger scale events, staffing for those events, security for those events. They'll manage a permitting process for outside event organizers in these parks. They'll work with concessionaires and vendors. They'll advertise events online and provide services to marginalized populations. They will ensure that their contracting utilizes WIMBY vendors and fundraise to supplement this public investment, and report both on revenue and programming twice a year back to the department. Also, our role is to manage free speech events. We'll continue to provide park maintenance and provide park ranger support in these parks. So again, that triumvirate of activation, maintenance, and safety and security are really what make great downtown park spaces. Okay, next slide. Okay, so specific to DSA's role, they will be providing regular daily programming that leads people to perceive the parks are increasingly safe. That public perception is really important. Activation opportunities will be free and accessible to the public. A majority of activations and programs will fall within these 4 categories. Examples of efforts falling within the categories include park amenities that support increased park use, such as plantings, outdoor furniture, and food trucks. Health and wellness include things like health and fitness programs and drop-in table games. Programs for youth and families include activities that support increased use of the parks for women and children, such as children's programming, games, and hands-on learning. And the reason that's important is because there is no greater indication or indicator of how safe a park is perceived to be than the number of women and children who choose to use that park, because that population typically does not go into unsafe spaces. And then arts and culture. This includes activities and events often offered in partnership with community organizations such as artists. Next slide. Contract comparison. So this is a side-by-side comparison, and here you can see that the comparison contract against our proposed contract. So on the left is existing, and on the right is what we're proposing. The new contract raises funding from the city to cover the cost of 2 additional parks, as well as increased operating costs. So while on that second line, you'll see what looks like a significant increase in costs, I would beg you to keep in mind that there has been significant inflation over the years, and we aren't just buying park and recreation programming activation services, that DSA has to set up a whole infrastructure of staff to deliver on this commitment. There's also new contract supplements that include funding for DSA staffing, with SPR concierge and park ranger presence, and the added parks to recognize the added challenges of our current downtown climate. DSA fundraising requirement will remain at a 3-to-1 match requirement. I should mention here that in the first cycle of this funding, DSA has exceeded this commitment almost 100% of the time during the 6 years of the first contract. And then the department will continue to take on maintenance assessments. This is our commitment to conduct regular and frequent park inspections in concert with DSA to make sure that the maintenance complements the programming and activation. Additionally, we will be developing a sponsorship process and moving to a programming model that takes in all that adapts to the changes in downtown worker schedules. So we want to make some changes in how we operate as a department to help make this successful as well. Next slide. So as many of you know, we started this with DSA back in 2015. It was the first year of the first tranche of Park District spending. We then moved into a 5-year agreement that was highly successful in changing the look and feel of both Occidental and Westlake Park. We are adding, let's see, I think I missed anything. We're adding Bell Street and Pioneer Square Park. Pioneer Square Park is where the pergola is in Pioneer Square. And then due to COVID, our contract negotiations were delayed, and we actually had a couple of years where we extended the contract because of COVID. So at this time, I'd like to hand it over to my colleague, John Scholes.
Thanks so much, Christopher. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, council members. This has been what we believe a good deal for downtown, a good deal for the public, and a good deal for the city. And great cities have great parks. The next slide shows you what these public spaces look like prior to our original agreement in 2016. They were valuable public assets that were largely vacant and underutilized by members of the public, whether they be folks who work or live or visit downtown. Through this partnership, we've been able to activate these spaces and make them safe and welcoming for everybody. And thank you to the Parks Department staff, the maintenance team that we work closely with, and thanks to our staff, Jen, Michael, Flo, Wes, Jesse, who you heard from earlier, and Patricia and Danny, who were also here, along with the ambassadors who are not with us today. This is credit to them and their great work to ensure these spaces are spaces that everybody can use throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the seasons, and come and have a great time and feel like they belong. Those were our objectives when we borrowed and deployed best practices from around the country on an activation strategy beginning in 2016. And you can cycle through just, Jacob, here the next few images. Our strategy has really been to have a consistent level of amenities, tables and chairs, games, et cetera, that are always there and people can count on them each and every day. And to layer on top of that regular programming and events, ice skating rinks, roller rinks, opportunities for selfies, et cetera. And then to invite other organizations in our community to come in and put on their own events and programming. And the impacts to date, and I won't go through all of these details, but they've been significant in a significant number of folks, 2.5 million people over the last year plus visiting Westlake and Occidental, improved perceptions. We regularly survey the public around their attitudes and perceptions on whether these are safe and inviting and clean spaces. Those perceptions have improved dramatically over the life of this agreement. And as Christopher noted, we report twice a year to the Parks Department on our activities, the level of investment, the number of visitors, and the results of these perception surveys. So by all accounts, this partnership has been a great success, and we look forward to building upon it, extending it, and extending this strategy and these activities staffing and programming into the 2 additional spaces that Christopher noted. You can continue here, Jacob. This is just some additional data points on the impacts through the current agreement. And as Christopher noted, the contract calls for a 3-to-1 match of 3 private dollars to every 1 city dollar. We've exceeded that in every year of the contract and averaged close to $7 for every $1 of city investment. The next slide just gives you a sampling of some of the organizations that we've partnered with. This is just a snapshot. These are organizations that have put on their own programming and events in these spaces. And we're really trying to lay out a canvas to create opportunities for others to come in and put on programming and events and to ensure that we're delivering a very diverse set of programming and creating inclusive spaces where everybody feels like they belong. So appreciate you considering this today. The MID is increasing its investment in these 4 spaces along with the proposed investment from the city. And thank you, as others have noted, for your strong support of the renewal of the MID earlier this year, which will result in about $3 million in additional revenue from property owners that will be going into activities like this. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for your leadership of that effort and your strong advocacy and support for great parks in our downtown. Thank you very much.
John, thank you so much, and thank you to the leadership of everyone at the Downtown Seattle Association for bringing these partnerships forward. I definitely have a couple of remarks, but given the thoroughness of the presentation, I don't have any additional questions. And I'm happy to turn it over to colleagues and hold my remarks till questions are done. We do also have Tracy Ratzliff from Council Central staff who can answer questions if colleagues have questions about the agreement. So are there any questions from council colleagues for the panel or Central staff? Okay, seeing none, I think Reza was right. I think this is a layup proposal, so this is great. I think that this is a great proposal that's been well vetted and put forward, and I thank Parks for that handy side-by-side comparison of the previous agreement and the newly revised one that was earlier in the presentation. I think that was helpful for myself and committee colleagues. I want to particularly call out how pleased I am to see the explicit inclusion of Bell Street Park in the new agreement. I think Bell Street Park has an immense amount of potential in the Belltown neighborhood to be a critical spine of activation in the middle of a neighborhood that's having lots of compounding challenges around public safety and other challenges around access to open space, and that by including these activations in this proposal, we can see more potential and more activation in that critical public space that is so important to the Belltown community. Beyond that, I think that we've seen at Occidental Park and Pioneer Park and other locations where the Downtown Seattle Association has been active that doing programming in these public spaces has been a core of our downtown recovery and getting people to come back downtown, not just for work, but for entertainment, for diversion. You know, my wife and my family and I come downtown on a regular basis to see shows at the Fifth Avenue Theater or to go to the Pike Place Market and activations in these parks. So I think it really speaks to the value of this agreement, the multiplier effect to the public benefit that we all get from this matching of public and private resources to realize these goals, and really look forward to passing this, approving this, and partaking in the festivities that we will see as a result. So thank you so much. Given that there's no additional comments or questions, I'm going to move the passage of Council Bill 120664. Is there a second? It sounds like Councilmember Herbold just seconded, but it was rather faint.
Good to know that I'm faint, sorry.
So that is a second. Okay, it's been seconded by
Was a
Councilmember
second.
Herbold. It's been moved and seconded to recommend passage of the bill. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Herbold.
Yes.
Council President Juarez.
Yes.
Councilmember Mosqueda.
Aye.
Chair Lewis.
Yes.
Chair, there are 4 in favor, none opposed.
This bill passes and will be referred to the next full council meeting. Thank you, everybody, for a productive hearing. Will the clerk please read item 4 into the record?
Item 4, Council Bill 120648, an ordinance relating to Seattle Parks and Recreation authorizing the acquisition of real property commonly known as 9200 18th Avenue Southwest, authorizing acceptance of a recording of the deed for open space, park, and recreation purposes, amending Ordinance 126725, which adopted the 2023 budget, including the 2023-2028 capital improvement program, changing appropriations to various departments and budget control levels, and from various funds in the budget, making an appropriation from this Park and Recreation Fund for acquisition and related costs, and ratifying and confirming certain prior acts, all by a 3/4 vote of the City Council.
Thank you so much, Mr. Clerk. And I believe that this is another agenda item where we're joined by Christopher Williams. So Christopher, I'll hand it over to you to introduce your panel and get into this bill.
Thank you, Councilmember Lewis. I also want to extend a recognition and thank you to you and your colleague for hanging in here with us for an extremely long agenda today. So thank you for that. We have a new attachment. Attachment 1 is a replacement purchase and sell agreement for the Westwood legislation. The replacement is due to negotiated price reduction that will enable us to pay for site remediation. The cost estimate for remediation ranged from $90,000 to $250,000, and we were getting the top end of that range. So good work to Lise Ward here, whom you'll hear from in a minute. Our Parks and Open Space Plan describes where we have open space gaps in the city, and the Westwood Highland Park neighborhood in West Seattle is certainly one of those neighborhoods. With this acquisition, we now have an opportunity, together with adjacent land, that will be transferred from our Seattle Department of Transportation to create a new park for the community that will be about 1 acre in size. Thanks to the property owner who was willing to sell, we now have a larger canvas for a future park. So this is a significant acquisition, almost at an unbelievable price. So Lise, you want to talk about that?
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Williams, and good afternoon, council members. Can I get the slide, please? Next slide, please. The Westwood Highland Park Residential Urban Village in West Seattle has a park service gap. The area shaded in orange means there is no 5-minute walking distance to a park in the marked areas of the urban village. Down on your lower left, the site is approximately at the location of the Blue Star. Seattle Parks and Recreation seeks council approval to acquire a 1,300 plus square foot property on which to develop a neighborhood park. It may be possible to acquire adjacent property from SDOT in the future, subject to council approval, that could increase the size of the future park to almost 1 acre. Next slide, please. In this photo before you, the property to be acquired is at the far right behind the fence. The area in the foreground is the SDOT triangle. That could be the subject of a future acquisition to increase the size of the park. This particular legislation includes the appropriation to purchase this property. As Christopher described, the purchase price is $3.25 million, which reflects a seller's contribution of $250,000 to remediate a pocket of lead that was discovered during the city's due diligence. as well as an additional $30,000 of administrative costs to process the acquisition. The soil contamination consists of lead, and $250,000 represents the city's consultant's high end of the range for remediation. Again, the foreground reflects the SDOT-owned triangle, as well as a portion of 18th Avenue Southwest that could be closed or jurisdiction transferred to parks to increase the size of the park, and we'll see that in a future slide. Next slide, please. This particular slide superimposes an early concept from an SDOT-led public outreach process juxtaposed against the potential park acquisition. So the triangle you see there was a concept that came about as a result of a public process to figure out how could we use the triangle for a park. SDOT actually suggested closing off a portion of 18th Avenue Southwest to traffic to increase the size of that triangle, which would provide us with a paved surface for like half-court basketball, for example. And the acquisition parcel is to the east, outlined in red. So as you can see from the triangle, the public wanted a lot of things happening on that triangle, and acquiring this additional property will allow these activities to be a little more separated, possibly with the addition of additional programming. And in particular, the orange circle you see there is a proposed play area, and potentially siting it on the acquisition parcel would keep the play area away from Delridge Southwest and Southwest Barton Street. Additional funding will be required for design development, and additional community involvement will be a component of the park planning and development process. Seattle Parks and Recreation is excited about acquiring, developing a neighborhood park in this rapidly growing urban village, and seeks your approval of this legislation.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Do colleagues have any questions for the presenters? Councilmember Herbold.
Thank you. Just want to say that this is a great example of how our neighborhood plans can continue long after their passage to guide city actions. To folks who say that we pass these plans and they just sit on a shelf gathering dust, this is a testament to that not being so. The Delridge Neighborhood Action Plan was passed several years ago, and it's just really encouraging to see that we've got city staffers who are keeping the community priorities in mind when opportunities like this come up. So I thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see any additional comments. I do want to just address that I understand, and I think you alluded to this earlier, Christopher, that Parks has a replacement purchase and sale agreement, and this is attachment 1 on the legislation. And this has been placed on the agenda as substitute amendment attachment 1 version 2. So Christopher, can you expand upon that a little bit for the committee? And we do have Tracy from central staff just to make sure we all are on the same page about how this is going to go down regarding this amendment.
So basically, we discovered that this site had some soil contamination, and Lise was able to go back and work with the seller to highlight what we thought the upper end of the cost would be for the cleanup of the site, upward $250,000, and was able to get that as a deduct on the price. And that's what the legislation actually, or rather the amendment gives you a more accurate picture of what we're actually spending for this parcel of property. Lise, did I cover that okay?
Yes, the appropriation request remains the same. It's just put in different categories. And just for a little further explanation, this particular acquisition was on a fast track. The seller's a developer who is finalizing permits for multifamily residential development on this site. So we had a very, very small window of opportunity to acquire this parcel. So sort of the negotiation, legislation, due diligence kind of all went parallel. So we signed at one price and we were performing due diligence at the same time we were submitting legislation for review. And during that time period, the results of the due diligence came back and we were able to make this adjustment and negotiate with the seller.
Thank you so much. Tracy, do you have anything to add to that, or can we rest on?
No, I think they've described accurately what the amendment does, so I think it's ready to be put forth as a replacement for the existing attachment. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Given those remarks, I'm going to move the substitute amendment attachment 1 version 2 purchase and sale agreement. And so is there a second? There is a second from Councilmember Herbold. So will the clerk please call the roll on adoption of the substitute?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Before voting, I'm wondering if I could be added as, not necessarily to the amendment, but to the underlying bill as a sponsor.
No objection.
Thank you.
No objection at all. Can the record reflect Councilmember Herbold's co-sponsorship of the underlying legislation?
Thank you.
Yes. So now will the clerk please call the roll on adoption of the substitute amendment to attachment 1?
Councilmember Herbold. Councilmember Mosqueda.
Aye.
Chair Lewis.
Yes.
Chair, there are 3 in favor, none opposed, and Council President Juarez is asked to be excused for the rest of the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. The amendment passes, and the amended bill is now before us with the amended purchase and sale agreement. Are there any further comments on this amended bill? Hearing no further comments, will the clerk please call the roll on the recommendation to pass the bill as amended?
Councilmember Herbold.
Yes.
Councilmember Mosqueda.
Aye.
Chair Lewis.
Yes.
Chair, there are 3 in favor and none opposed.
Excellent. The bill is amended will be referred to the next full council meeting, and we can move on to the next agenda item, agenda item 5. Will the clerk please read agenda item 5 into the record?
Council Bill 120644, an ordinance authorizing Seattle Parks and Recreation to enter into an agreed order or consent decree with the Washington State Department of Ecology or U.S. Environmental Protection Agency to undertake work at the Duwamish Waterway Park site and to seek and accept state remedial action grants for cleanup work related to the site.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk, and I will hand it back over to you, Deputy Superintendent Williams.
Thank you. I just want to highlight that lease Ward is our secret weapon in the world of parkland acquisition. Thank you, lease. We're proposing a substitute attachment A, version 2. The substitute includes a map of the cleanup location as well as the scope and timeline for the work that will be done at the site. So this is a fairly complex presentation, and I think I'll try to summarize what we're here to do before I really dive into it. So the routine way we would normally deal with a consent decree order by the Department of Ecology would typically be at the front end of a land acquisition. We purchased this property back in 2019 and are recently dealing with a consent decree from the Department of Ecology. The process doesn't usually flow that way. I think what you heard previously is that we are used to dealing with park acquisition sites that require environmental remediation. This park is an example of that, and I'd like to talk through kind of an overview of the legislation, provide some background related to the property, and then provide an overview of the next steps. And I've also got Scott Stevens here, the park engineer, who will help me out with this presentation and some of the more complex areas. So next slide, please. The pending legislation does two things. It authorizes the department to sign an agreed order with the State Department of Ecology. This legislation commits the department to certain remedial environmental investigations and actions that make the department eligible for grants up to 50% of the reimbursement cost. The second thing this does is it includes the current Duwamish Waterway Park, including the adjacent Seattle Department of Transportation right-of-way and port property. The park addition property is still operated under a commercial lease, and I'll get to that a little later in the presentation. It's the area that says park addition. Next slide. So a brief history here. This is located at the south end of the 14th Avenue South Bridge. We've been operating this site as a park since 1975, which I think is significant. And based on significant interest, we acquired this property back in 2019. Again, we would normally be dealing with issues around environmental cleanup and remediation work at the front end of an acquisition. This is a little unusual. Next slide. During the purchase of the property, environmental testing identified arsenic and lead, and therefore, in preparation for construction, we submitted a soil remediation plan to the Washington Department of Ecology. In July 2020, we entered into a voluntary cleanup program. And in September 2020, the park renovation project began, primarily supported by funds raised by the Seattle Park Foundation and Friends of Duwamish Waterway Park. The park improvements at the time included more welcoming park entries, an all ages accessible playground, and new park furnishings. Environmental remedial actions included selective soil excavation, removal and replacement with clean infill soil, construction of concrete pathways, and placement of vegetation and laying sod materials. We also incorporated the installation of capping technologies. In 2022, the Department of Ecology moved the site from the voluntary cleanup program to their more formal program referencing the complexity of the site. So one of the reasons they decided to put this on sort of compulsory compliance is its proximity to the Duwamish River, which is a noted Superfund site, and just the need to ensure that the uplands were given, I think, equally as rigorous consideration as the in-water work that will occur in the future. Next slide. Another complexity is that concurrent with the park improvement project in 2021, an adjacent site was acquired by the city. This is the area highlighted in red. The site had been identified by the community as a location to meet many of the goals identified as part of the city's Duwamish Valley program, or DVP, to support equitable opportunities and to mitigate displacement pressures. While the department acquired the property, OPCD continues to work with community to lead site planning that advances community priorities for developing community supportive spaces and open space. This includes increasing access to the Duwamish River, restoring aquatic habitat, creating a network of connected open spaces along the Duwamish River, and expanding opportunities for cultural activities and uses for the site. Concurrently, the department is managing the lease with the existing tenant and is reserving the lease revenues for future site development and expenses. Next slide. So the agreed order next steps, as mentioned here, does not identify the cleanup plan per se. It sets forth the process to develop and implement such a plan. The next steps in the process, after this legislation is approved, the superintendent signs off on the agreed order. and this will begin the remedial investigation and feasibility study phase. We anticipate this will take about 18 months. Department of Ecology will be in the lead on the, I'm sorry. I think we have 18 months. And we will learn much more about this process as we work with them. But based on what we know now, we estimate that the cleanup will be about $1.2 million. We've already identified roughly $500,000 in our capital plan, and we'll continue to work with Department of Ecology to refine that $1.2 million and to lean into any grant opportunities that might be available through the Department of Ecology. I'll pause here and ask Scott Stevens if you'd like to add anything here, Scott.
No, thank you, Superintendent Williams. I think that's the real important thing to acknowledge here is that we're going into the investigation phase, and that's really going to set a lot of the targeted goals we're going to be trying to reach in terms of cleanup for this. So the investigation phase is really going to be defining sort of the scope from here on out.
Great. Next slide. Thank you, Scott. So we wanted to end this slide depicting the current use of the park. So the red dotted area there is currently the shoreline area, and that is currently closed to the public because it is a shoreline area. A small area of the park remains fenced from community use, and again, that's the area in the red. No remediation work was done in this fenced area during the park improvement project in part because of the proximity to the shoreline. And I just want to acknowledge that there are other partners here that could own some future liability for this cleanup. However, when we purchased the site back in 2019, in order to purchase it from King County, we had to indemnify them from future environmental hazards, which is not to say that the Department of Ecology can't come back later and name them and also name the Port of Seattle. Those opportunities are still available, but this is where we stand today, which has Parks as the lead agency on this cleanup and removal. So I will pause right there and ask if there are any questions.
Thank you so much, Deputy Superintendent. Councilmember Herbold.
Thank you so much. Really appreciated the opportunity to have a briefing on this legislation earlier this month. I have some additional questions, many of them just to restate for the public record what I heard in a previous briefing. I just really appreciate Chair's indulgence here. This neighborhood is the Seattle neighborhood with the highest proportion of children in the least access to green space across the city. They've lost their community center for the next year and a half to needed renovations, all important work, but the closure is definitely hitting the community hard. And so my questions are primarily focused on what the impacts are to the community for potential future closures. So my understanding is that the majority of the Dormish Waterway Park, which is largely unfenced and open to the public, has already been remediated and deemed safe for recreational use by the Department of Health this year. And the portion of the park that we are discussing today is currently fenced off. So as long as park users honor that fence, there's no danger to using the park. Can you please confirm that understanding to start?
Yes, so the area, maybe we can go back a couple of slides here that shows, okay, there. Okay, so this area outlined in green is currently available and open to public use. This area outlined in red is not open to public use, and it is being leased to a company that works in that shaded area there. So there is still public park use at that site.
Thank
It
you.
is, yeah.
Let's see here. When we spoke, I think I remember hearing that the remediation contemplated at this location would require a day or two of park closure, but you were still checking in with operating there and weren't entirely certain. Could you please confirm your current understanding of how long the park will need to be closed?
So I might defer to Scott Stevens on that. I think what we were referring to was maybe an intermittent 1 or 2 days worth of closure for soil testing. Scott, can you verify that, please?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we anticipate just a small amount of time for the closure as we come in and gain additional samples with potentially a drill rig or digging handholds possibly. But the closures won't be long term. We're simply going to get samples and send them off for additional analysis to fill in any data gaps that Ecology may see.
Thank you. And then as it relates to the public engagement for the investigation and study phases, I understand that the Department of Ecology will be managing that. Just want to state my hope that we can all count on the Parks and Rec's wonderful engagement capacity to assist the Department of Ecology to work closely with OPCD as well, because they have just completed a robust community engagement regarding the Unity Electric site, which is an adjacent property that community has been advocating for the inclusion of a community-owned multi-purpose building. Again, South Park is a community that is underserved, but there are multiple city projects from multiple departments that are moving forward to address the fact that it's an underserved community. But many projects are moving forward simultaneously. There's a danger of exhausting the community with unaligned engagement efforts and failing to learn what we've heard, learn from what we've heard previously. So just want to make sure that DOE benefits from what community members have already been saying, and that we've got somebody representing the city that is sort of helping to manage and track all of these different discussions.
Absolutely. We will have a project manager assigned to this, and we'll be hand in hand with the Department of Ecology as they go into the community and talk about our park.
Thank you so much. And then, Mr. Chair, one last very short question.
Please.
Thank you. When we met last month, I understood that Parks and Rec would not need additional funding based on an estimated 1.2 million in total cleanup costs. Is that still in line with your current thinking as far as the costs?
Yes, that's our current thinking, and that thinking is padded by the awareness that we are eligible for a Department of Ecology grant, which would cover, we think, about 50% of the cost.
Very good. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your taking the time to bring me up to speed about this effort before this meeting, and just thoroughly addressing the concerns of the community and answering my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Herbold. Are there any other questions from committee members? I don't see any. So similar to the previous piece of legislation, I understand there's a substitute attachment A version 2 from the department that includes a map of the cleanup location and the scope and timeline of the work, and we covered that in the presentation. So this amendment came too late to be placed formally on the agenda, but central staff did distribute to committee members prior to the meeting, and there are printed copies available to the public for people who are here in chambers. The updated version will be available online after the meeting, and with that, I move to verbally adopt version 2 of attachment A to Council Bill 120664. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Herbold.
Yes.
Councilmember Mosqueda.
Aye.
Chair Lewis.
Yes.
Chair, there are 3 in favor and none opposed.
The amendment passes, and the bill as amended is now before us. I move that we do final passage of this bill as amended. Is there a second? Moved and seconded. Will the clerk please call the roll on recommending the passage of the amended bill?
Councilmember Herbold.
Yes.
Councilmember Mosqueda.
Aye.
Chair Lewis.
Yes.
Chair, there are 3 in favor and none opposed.
The bill passes. The bill as amended passes and will be referred to the next full council meeting. Item 6. We're getting close, everybody. Item 6. Will the clerk please read agenda item 6 into the record?
Council Bill 120650, an ordinance relating to Seattle Parks and Recreation authorizing the acquisition of real property at 6109 South Fountain Street, authorizing acceptance of the deed for open space, park, and recreation purposes, and ratifying and confirming certain prior acts.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Christopher, handing it back over to you.
Great, thank you so much. So we have a unique opportunity to acquire more of the headwaters of the Taylor Creek area. This is an important salmon-bearing stream in southeast Seattle. Taylor Creek helps preserve the surrounding watershed. Taylor Creek also descends through the city-owned Lake Ridge Park and Dead Horse Canyon near the city border before it empties into Lake Washington. Our colleagues at Seattle Public Utilities have helped restore the lower reaches of the creek, which are home to Chinook salmon. Though small in size, the property is an invaluable piece of a puzzle that makes up the creek headwaters, which are the natural springs that are the water source of the creek. So at this point, I'd like to turn it back over to the capable Lise Ward.
Good afternoon again, council members. Next slide, please. Seattle Parks and Recreation seeks authority to acquire green space property in southeast Seattle's Taylor Creek headwaters using existing appropriations. We've tentatively reached agreement to acquire a 14,000 square foot vacant parcel. We've performed due diligence and the closing is pending council approval of this legislation. Acquiring this property will add to existing park-owned parcels in order to preserve the last surviving headwater wetland supporting this salmon-bearing Taylor Creek. Next slide, please. The black dotted line there shows the boundaries of the watershed, which include areas of unincorporated King County. The red line is the city line. The preservation of Taylor Creek headwaters is in alignment with Seattle Park's goal of acquiring and preserving habitat, and the parcel that is the subject of this legislation is adjacent to existing city-owned parcels which were donated in 2010. And it will add to the existing 8 acres that the city currently owns, both north and south of the property of the city line. Next slide, please. So you'll see in the picture there, the areas that are already shaded in green were the parcels that were donated several years ago. And the parcel with the spread star is the proposed acquisition site. The subject property is appraised at $110,000, and we've completed our due diligence and we're ready to close, subject to council approval. We ask for your support.
Thank you so much. Do colleagues have any questions for the presenters? Seeing no questions, I will move Council Bill 120650. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Will the clerk please call the roll on the recommendation to pass the bill?
Councilmember Herbold.
Yes.
Councilmember Mosqueda.
Aye.
Chair Lewis.
Yes.
Chair, there are 3 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. It's been moved. Thank you. The bill passes and will be referred to the next full council meeting. Agenda item 7. Will the clerk please read agenda item 7 into the record?
Item 7, Council Bill 120667, an ordinance relating to Seattle Parks and Recreation, authorizing the Second Amendment to the easement agreement, authorizing acceptance of a recording of the Second Amendment to the easement agreement, and ratifying and confirming certain prior acts.
Thank you so much, Mr. Clerk. And in keeping with our practice of making sure every single Parks and Recreation employee presents to committee today on our agenda items, I am honored to welcome Jeffrey Bishop to the committee. And Christopher, I will hand it back over to you. What a day of moving Parks and Recreation legislation. So moving it to you, Christopher.
Thank you so much, Council Member. So our department uses several ways to preserve open space, ranging from acquisitions of simple fee interest to conservation easements. Normally, when we acquire property in fee and it has a house on it, we demolish the house to return it to its natural state. However, we bought this property back in 1998 in the St. Mark's Greenbelt area, and the public felt very strongly that the house on the parcel should be preserved and felt as though it had significant historical and architectural significance. Historic Seattle was brought in to manage the house while the department managed the Greenbelt. This relationship has worked well over the years, but all things are affected by time. This action creates flexibility for Historic Seattle to continue their good work on this site and to allow them to create financial capacity for other good work. I will now turn this over to Jeffrey Bishop, our Senior Property Manager. Jeffrey.
Yes, thank you, Assistant Superintendent Williams. Good afternoon, councilors. Jeffrey Bishop, Property Manager for Seattle Parks and Recreation. This ordinance, if I could get the second slide, please. This ordinance allows SPR to file a Second Amendment to the easement provided to Historic Seattle for the preservation of the Egan House. In 1988, the property interests were split between the city and Historic Seattle simultaneously at closing. The city then provided Historic Seattle with an easement to have access to the house. Slide, please. The unique nature of the design has made the Egan House historically significant. Sometimes known as the Cheese Wedge House, it is known for its Northwest modernist design. Property's been nicely preserved throughout the years through the efforts of Historic Seattle, and I'm not sure if Kai is present in the council chambers, but if not, I'll pass on. But if he's there, he can make some comments. I don't see him online.
Kai is not present in council chambers, Jeffrey.
Okay, so we will move on then. As you can see from the photographs, though, on the right hand of this slide, the house has been extremely well preserved. Next slide, please. The original easement, again, was in 1998. It only granted ingress and egress and for access to utilities to the house. The First Amendment was enacted because it was determined that some renovation needed to take place inside the house. And today we have the Second Amendment, which is being proposed this year. This amendment not only offers flexibility for Historic Seattle to manage the historic nature of the property, it also creates a pathway to allow for some of the improvements to contribute to the property tax rolls. It also offers the potential for a potential homeowner who has a passion for architectural history to have both a home and a treasure to cherish and preserve. The elements of the Second Amendment are as extends the term by 35 years and offers two 35-year options, which mirror mortgage terms. It also changes the total loss by casualty clause that was in the original easement to allow for remedy within 2 years. It amends the nature of the easement to allow a potential buyer to receive financing. It enhances the preservation of the landmark should the owner of the house, Historic Seattle, choose to sell it to a private buyer through a preservation easement they would put on the property as well. And it also recognizes correction of an error in the legal description that was discovered from the early 1900s and ratifies past actions that may have been error as a result. We would submit this item for the committee's consideration. Appreciate your support and stand ready for questions.
Jeffrey, thank you so much for that presentation. Do colleagues have any questions for the panel? Okay, seeing no questions, I do just want to say, because we aren't joined today by our friends and partners at Historic Seattle, I want to acknowledge the work that Kai Kelly and Historic Seattle have put into pursuing these changes, and I want to thank and lift up the work of Parks and Recreation for diligently working with us to get this legislation prepared and in front of committee and to do it before our budget shut off. So thank you so much. So with that, I will move Council Bill 120667. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any final remarks on this legislation? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll on the recommendation to pass the bill?
Councilmember Herbold.
Yes.
Councilmember Mosqueda.
Aye.
Chair Lewis.
Yes.
Chair, there are 3 in favor, none opposed.
The bill passes and will be referred to the next full council meeting. Item 8, will the clerk please read agenda item 8 into the record? Our final agenda item.
Council Bill 120629, an ordinance relating to King County Conservation Futures Levy proceeds, authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement, Amendment 1 to the interlocal cooperation agreement between the King County and the City of Seattle for conservation futures funded open space acquisition projects, and authorizing the deposit of 2021, 2022, and 2023 allocations from King County Conservation Futures Levy proceeds into the City of Seattle's Parks and Recreation Fund.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I will hand it back over to our Parks panel to discuss this agenda item.
Thank you, Councilmember Lewis. Conservation future taxes are our primary source of matching funds for property acquisition. For more than 30 years, the City of Seattle and Seattle Parks and Recreation have benefited from King County Conservation future taxes to preserve passive outdoor recreation and open space across the city. We've received nearly $100 million to support the acquisition of more than 200 properties across the system. This legislation authorizes the latest round of purchases. The amendment covers 15 acquisitions, 7 of which are completed and 8 are still in progress. So at this time, I'll turn it back over to Lise.
Good afternoon again, council members. Thank you. Thank you so much for including this on a very crowded agenda. Next slide, please. In order to take advantage of over $12 million of successful grant applications to the King County Conservation Futures Tax, affectionately known as CFT in these circles, for past and present open space property acquisitions, Seattle Parks and Recreation requests City Council approval of Amendment 1 to the Seattle King County CFT interlocal agreement. Next slide, please. Seattle and King County have entered into a council-approved interlocal agreement for receiving King County Conservation Futures Tax funding. Each time King County approves a round of CFT grants, the City Council approves an amendment to the interlocal, which authorizes acceptance of the King County funds. The old interlocal agreement, which was in place for close to 30 years, to which the council approved amendments A through Z, ran out of alphabet letters, then progressed to AA through EE, a total of 31 amendments, was replaced by a new interlocal agreement in 2021. Next slide, please. King County Conservation Futures Tax is funded by a special assessment on property tax bills The monies support protection of forests and farms, outdoor recreation areas, and open space. There are restrictions associated with receiving and using these funds. The properties acquired using CFT funds cannot support off-leash areas or sports fields and courts, and impervious surfaces are limited to 15% of a property's area. All of the city's recent land acquisition programs have been leveraged with CFT funds. Since 1989, approximately $98 million in grants have supported over 200 acquisitions, resulting in over 150 acres of parkland acquired, either developed with neighborhood parks or preserved as green spaces and natural areas. Next slide, please. And this table is a quick summary of how everything adds up to $12,025,000. So the council districts are in the first column. Second column's description, brief description of the acquisition, the CFT allocation engendered by successful grant applications, and status of each acquisition project. We seek your support in obtaining approval of these amendments so we can both apply for reimbursements of monies already expended to complete projects and to continue with projects that are in process. And I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Are there any questions from committee members? I do have a question on this fund source. One of the things that I've been working with a lot of community members on is trying to figure out ways to increase the amount of turf fields. Turf fields being obviously something that's very popular community amenity. Is this an eligible fund source for those kinds of capital projects? I noticed that there were playfield improvements that were funded on the list. Do any of them include initial capital?
Playfield addition. It was acquisition, so it was a playfield, a grass playfield addition, I believe. The CFT funds are intended for passive park uses only. I believe King County also has a ball field grant, development grant. But if CFT monies are used for acquisition purposes, the use is restricted to passive uses and not court or turf field construction.
Well, thank you for that clarification, and excited to be accepting these grants. So seeing no other questions, I move the committee recommend passage of Council Bill 120629.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any comments on the bill? Seeing no final comments, will the clerk please call the roll on recommending passage of the bill?
Councilmember Herbold.
Yes.
Councilmember Mosqueda.
Aye.
Chair Lewis.
Yes.
Chair, there are 3 in favor, none opposed.
The bill passes and will be referred to the next full council meeting. And committee members, that concludes our very, very full agenda today. Thank you for your patience, and thank you to our team from Parks for being available to walk us through all of those items. There is no further business to come before the committee, and I don't see anyone raising their hand for a good of the